सकते हैं आप।
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of Allah, the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. Why should we feel good to be Muslims? I mentioned it yesterday that one of the reasons why we should feel comfortable being Muslims, despite the fact that we were born Muslims and we didn't choose to be Muslims, but what we find in the text that we believe as God's word, an overwhelming emphasis on use of intellect, on questioning, on critical examination, on understanding the Quran and reflecting upon its verses. So, a book that is so strongly urging the reader to understand and to see for himself, herself, whether the text does seem to be from God or not, indeed is a text that is worthy of being taken seriously. The second reason that I'm mentioning today for us Muslims to feel good about the fact that we are Muslims, uh, I'm not saying that we should be proud or arrogant. We should be humbly confident and have a good feeling. And that reason is that it presents a complete picture of why we are here in this world and what we are expected to do. Indeed, that's exactly what the reason for looking for a religion is. We are looking for a purpose in life. We would want to give a complete uh, explanation to what this life is all about. Uh, we need to understand it in totality, something which we don't find happening in the manner life is taken, generally speaking, by people in this world. So, what we find in the Quran is a mention which understandably is repeated over and over again, that this worldly life of ours is a trial, nothing less and nothing more than that. So, one of the clear statement about this fact is what is mentioned in the second verse of Surah Al-Mulk, the 67th Surah of the Quran. It says, خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. God created death and life so that he should try you, test you as to who amongst you are the ones who do good deeds, who are the ones who perform well. وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْغَفُورُ. And he is very strong and he is merciful. He is merciful and he is strong. In other words, this life has only one purpose: to find out who are the people that are using their freedom judiciously, properly. All humans have been provided with freedom, and they have also been provided with an understanding as to what is right, good, and what is wrong, bad, evil. This world is attractive and glamorous, and on many occasions, what is evil is presented to us in a way that it appears attractive. It tends to satisfy our immediate needs. But while we are doing things which are wrong and evil because they are attractive, we also simultaneously know that what we are doing is wrong. And virtue, goodness, is desirable. And quite often when we do it, uh, we find that the goings are tough and difficult. And yet, we have a good feeling inside us that what we're doing is good and desirable. So the Almighty is telling us that the reason it's happening the way it's happening is that this life was designed by the Almighty to be a trial, and the next life is going to be the result of this trial. So God wanted us humans to have a place of living which is of immense beauty or of exceptional uh, luxury, attractiveness, comfort, and satisfaction, the life of the paradise. However, he wanted us to enter that life deserving it. So, in order for us to deserve the success of the next life, the eternal, unending success, he designed this worldly life to be a trial. So, this life is nothing but a trial. The Almighty mentions it in Surah 89, Al Fajr, verses 15 to 17, that it's strange that humans don't recognize it. فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ. It's very strange that when your Lord, when He gives to humans uh, such situations where they have blessings and they get respect, the individual says, Rabbi Akraman, my Lord has given me respect. وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ. However, on the other hand, when he tries him, وَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقًا, and puts him into a test where his sustenance is restricted, فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانًا, he says that my Lord has uh, insulted me, caused me to go through ignominy. Kalla, not at all. Neither the one who is rich is in actual real fact successful and is respected by the Almighty, nor the one who has limited finding it difficult to meet his daily needs and meet the two ends. He is insulted. Both are going through a trial. Both are being tested by the Almighty. He is testing humans to find out as to whether they are grateful when they are given blessings by the Almighty more than what they need and they deserve. And he also wants to find out whether we are patient and steadfast despite adversities and difficulties. That's what this life is all about. Uh, what we are expected to achieve in both kinds of situations, apparently good situations and apparently difficult ones. What he wants us to do is to achieve moral and spiritual excellence. He has set forth for us a goal wherein we are expected to do well both morally, both with fellow human beings, as well as with God Almighty. Our attitude with Him is also expected to be as best as is possible. So he has he has announced that the goal of this life, the ultimate goal that we humans must set forth ourselves to achieve is tazkiyah. So in Surah 91, Surah Shams, verses 9 and 10, he says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. The one who has done tazkiyah of his soul has succeeded. And the one who has caused his soul to be defiled, to be made dirty, has is doomed, has failed. So we all humans have been provided with a personality and inner self that we are expected to take care of. If we deal with it properly, if we behave well in this world, uh, we do what the Almighty expects from us, we are going to do our tazkiyah, which essentially means that we will purify ourselves from uh, the evil that threatens our personalities, the evil of base, lower desires, and the evil of our ego, uh, threatening the progress of our uh, moral achievements. That's one thing. When we are able to purify ourselves, we then are able to achieve excellence, both in morality as well as in our contact, in our endeavor to come close to God. So in morality as well as in spirituality. That's a goal which is there for all humans to be able to achieve as best as they can. We all humans have been given a tremendous potential to perform well, both morally and spiritually. However, we are threatened by the inner weaknesses, inhibitions of base desires of our ego. And God's religion tells us that all that we are doing, in reality, the ultimate goal is to be able to be successful in the next life. And for that to happen, we've got to do as best as we can to achieve the all important goal of tazkiyah, purify our souls, and to enable our souls to achieve higher levels of morality and spirituality. How would that happen if we follow God's religion? Well, the Almighty tells us that it will happen if we will understand properly and follow His message. What does that message say? Well, primarily it is comprised of two components. It is, on the one hand, telling us, giving us Al Kitab, and on the other hand, it's also giving us Al Hikmah. Al Hikmah is actually the mention of moral principles that we already have with us. We've come to this world, all humans have come to this world with an innate understanding of what is morally good from what is bad. Along with this morality, uh, Al Hikmah also is comprised of uh, beliefs, belief in God, belief in life hereafter, belief in divine revelation. How are the two related? Well, moral principles, the way they have been given to us all, the entire humanity, they raise a few important questions. One, why is it that all humans have been given the same moral appreciation? The answer is because there is only one designer, one God. Therefore, don't be surprised that you got the same morality, the same moral sense. The other question that morality poses is why? I mean, as I've already said, morality is problematic. It's not easy to be a morally upright person. Quite often, while being morally good, you go through difficulties. While being morally evil, you find goings very attractive. So why? The answer is life hereafter. As I'm mentioning, this life is a trial, and the next life is going to be the result of the trial. How have we gotten all this information with such confidence? The answer is divine revelation. So, what I'm saying is that the contents of this religion are primarily two: Al Hikmah, which is the description of moral understanding that humans have been given. The Quran doesn't claim that it has brought anything new to humans for humans to understand. It tells us that what the Quran is telling us is what we already know, but we tend to forget. Therefore, the book of God is a reminder. It is a zikr. It tends to remind us about what we already know, and yet we forget, we ignore. Well, because of the difficulty of the attractiveness of what is evil, and the difficulties one has to go through if one follows what is good. So that's one part of God's religion, which is Al Hikmah, moral principles as well as beliefs that support the understanding of moral principles. The other part is Al Kitab, which is the law and the Sharia, which again is based on Al Hikmah, on moral principles. There are certain areas in human endeavor, in the human journey, where even though one would want to follow principles of morality, there are confusions, there are difficulties of understanding. The Almighty chose to select only a few of those tricky, problematic areas and gave his clear verdict, which is called Sharia, the law. So, the Sharia, the law, which is, by the way, a very brief list of do's and don'ts. The Almighty hasn't given us any elaborate, long list of what should be done and what should not be done, because He didn't want our life to become unnecessarily restrictive and difficult by being required to follow a very long list of what is to be done and what is not to be done. We already know what needs to be done through our moral appreciation. Sharia, the law, is a limited list of do's and don'ts, which is based on morality. But because humans have their own limitations, at times they cannot know what exactly needs to be done in certain situations. And the answer to such situations that they are seeking is important to be gotten. So those answers come from God, and they take the form of Al Kitab, which is the law. So Al Kitab and Al Hikmah, the law, moral understanding, and beliefs put together is what God's religion is all about. And when we follow this religion properly, sincerely, we are going through the process of doing our tazkiyah. So here we have in our religion a barometer which enables us to see as to whether we are doing properly and in our religion or not. Uh, we follow our religion, and obviously it's quite possible that some people are doing it just because that's what's happening around them. They're just going through the motions, and tazkiyah is not taking place. So the real check as to whether what we are doing is being done properly, whether we are moving in the right direction or not, is the check of tazkiyah. If tazkiyah is there, then we are following God's religion properly. This presentation of the whole picture as to where this religion has come from, what does it comprise, and what is the ultimate goal? All these questions have been answered in one verse. Don't be surprised, therefore, that that verse has been mentioned in the Quran 4 times. It's mentioned twice in Surah Al Baqarah, once in Surah Al Imran, the second chapter, the third chapter, and once in Surah Al Jummah, the 62nd Surah, the 62nd chapter. I am quoting the second verse of Surah Al Jummah, which says, وَالَّذِي بَعْثَ فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ رَسُولًا مِّنْهُمْ. He is the one, God, who was sent amongst the unlettered Ummiyin, the people of Mecca and its surroundings, who were not aware of God's religion from before. Unlike the children of Israel, who were aware of and were given God's books and were given the teachings of his prophets, the children of Ismail living in the Arabian Peninsula for 2,000 years were unaware of what God's religion is. They weren't informed about it directly through prophets. So God chose to send his messenger, the last messenger, to them. Yatlu alayhim ayatihi. He recites before them his verses, وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and through it he does their tazkiyah, the ultimate goal. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, and for that purpose he teaches them al-kitab and al-hikmah. وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ, even though before that they were in cross misguidance. That is what our religion tells us. The ultimate purpose of religion is, the ultimate goal is. All other ideologies that we have around us are either flawed or incomplete. The world that you are living in is very attractive in many ways. It promises many things that are on offer. But the problem with what we see in most of the ideologies is that you start wondering, what next? I mean, okay, if we are going to study, we'll have a good career, and we ought to have a good career. There's nothing wrong in it. Then what? Then we'll have a good life. Okay, and then what? Well, then we'll have a good, uh, you know, we'll retire and we'll have a good retired life. And then what? Then we're going to have a good death. So what about what's going to happen after that, beyond our death? No answers. Honestly, the understandings, the ideologies that we have been given to follow are limited. They don't answer the real questions. It is God's religion, Islam, the ideology that we were born into, and call it we didn't pick it by our own choosing. It wasn't our selection, but we followed it because others were following it. But when we go through its contents, we get a feeling that here is an ideology, here is a point of view which is actually answering most of the important questions that we have in life. Why have we come to this life? Who created us? Why did he create us? What does he expect us to do? And what is going to happen after this life? So, therefore, I say it again, as I said yesterday, uh, we have a good reason to feel good that we are Muslims. Not only that, honestly, we, after we appreciate what has been given to us in the form of this religion, this religious message, we should have another feeling, which is natural, that this message of ours, which is a complete picture, it tells us what exactly is the ultimate purpose of this life. We get a very strong feeling that this ideology, this message is needed by everyone. It's meant for every human being. People are desperate to know about it. The only trouble is that, the ones who have this message, us, we are not as yet properly equipped, prepared to let others know about it. We need to do it properly, but for that purpose, we need to first understand it ourselves, internalize it, follow it properly, and and hopefully, inshallah, I have a very strong feeling when we'll start doing it ourselves, the rest would follow. The others would ask us, learn from us, and would also come close to it. That's what I had to say today, and I'm now available for questions.
You can raise your hand or you can start asking, unmute your mic and start asking. Or if you want to type it in, I'll read it out to Dr. Zaheer. No questions?
That's a great news.
Very good news. So I'll start while they're thinking. So you mentioned good and evil, right? And obviously we can read all the 114 chapters of Quran to figure out what is good and what is evil. Is there an easier way to figure that out? Is there something that that we can just um, you know on the spot figure out if this is something good or something evil? Is
I
there a
mean,
compass?
we have a moral compass which is already there within us by design. Uh, Quite often, we know uh, immediately from what's happening around us as to whether it's correct or not. I give the example of the fact that at times when, if God forbid, our parents, one of them, while making a statement, is telling a lie. Now, our parents normally are our ideals. They are the ones we look up to. But if they are making a false statement, there's something inside us, even as youngsters, that tells us that, you know what, you know, Dad, mom shouldn't have said it. So, telling lies is bad, speaking the truth is good, helping out others is good, causing harm to others is bad, and so on. I mean, there's a long list of do's and don'ts, which we know from inside that that it's good or bad. So, what do we need to do? Well, we need to be just conscious of the fact that we are understanding what is happening around us from a moral perspective that's lying inside us. So we should value it, take it seriously, and our conscience doesn't deceive us. It gives us the right judgments, the right verdicts. It so happens that when we decide to go against the voice of our conscience, uh, to begin with, we meet with stiff resistance. I mean, we feel nervous, we feel bad about it, our conscience pricks. However, obviously, if we continue to defy it, then there might come a point when the voice of our conscience might get weakened. But, you know, to begin with, and normally, our conscience is good enough for us to know as to what is good and what is bad morally.
Great. So there's a question here. Can you elaborate on tazkiyah? What does it really mean?
Tazkiya is the ultimate goal that our religion has set forth for all of us to be able to achieve in this world. That's what religion tries to do. Uh, as I said, Tazkiya is primarily purification. That is, we as humans, even though we know what is good from what is bad, quite often what is bad is it appears attractive. Why? Because this life is a trial. Its rewards are immediate. It is available in cash. You tell a lie, and quite often you would find there's some people who are amused. You might be able to get some wealth as a consequence of making a false statement, etc. You speak the truth, and quite often you get yourself into trouble. So what happens is that because of this attractiveness of evil and because of the difficulties associated with goodness and virtue, uh, this evil, it threatens to overwhelm us. So when we are going through the process of tazkiyah by understanding God's religion, uh, which is expressed in Al-Kitab and Al-Hikmah, we purify ourselves. So our religion is primarily comprised of three different levels of purification. The purification of our body, we do wuzu before we say our prayers, we take a bath in some cases, a purification of our edibles, what we eat. God wants us to make sure that what we eat is pure. And the most significant thing is purification of our soul. That is, we behave in a manner that our actions are all pure, morally pure. So when we go through this process of purification, that is eliminating, eradicating what is evil from us, which obviously is an ongoing, continuous struggle. What happens is that the more we get purified, the more our ability to grow morally and to come close to God spiritually, the more it is released. And as a result, our inner hidden potential of growing morally and spiritually, uh, it is given the opportunity to express itself. So both put together are a part of the process of tazkiyah, purification as well as growth, purification from evil and moral and spiritual growth.
Great, Dr. Zahir. So, you know, there are people out there who are doing tazkiyah, but they're not called Muslims, right? I mean, from what you're explaining, as far as um, the purification part, right? They're doing this, but they're not called Muslims. So what about them? Are they good people? Should we consider them good people, bad people? What should be the um, what should be our attitude towards them?
When we categorize an individual as bad, evil, um, we are being arrogant. We have no business whatsoever to call anybody bad. It's only God's prerogative to decide as to whether a person is good or bad. And his decision is expressed through his prophets. So, quite often, it so happens that some Muslims describe non Muslims as bad because what they find in the Quran is condemnation of some people who weren't Muslims at the time when the Quran was being revealed. Well, the fact of the matter is that when the prophets of God are present in the world, practically, physically delivering God's message to others, then the message becomes so very clear and manifest that it's only the evil people who are drawn away from that message. So they get condemned. Today, in our contemporary world, the situation is very different. Uh, the message of God is with us. We are its representatives, and we are expected to deliver it to others, not only through our words, but more significantly through our deeds, our actions. So, if a person, coming to your question, is doing otherwise well morally, but is not a Muslim, honestly, it should be a cause of concern for us. What exactly is happening? Why is it that the person who is morally good is still not attracted towards God's word? Because what you find from the message of God is that all good humans have the potential of coming close to the Almighty's message and to embrace it. If it's not happening, then it could be one of the two reasons. Either the person you think is good is not really genuinely good, or the person who is really genuinely good has not been presented with the message of God properly and truly. So I think whenever we find people good around us who is not Muslims, we should ask ourselves, why exactly is it that it's not happening that these people are impressed by God's word? And quite often the answer that we get from inside our souls is that it's because we are not demonstrating it properly. So the answer is to your question is we have no right to describe anyone as evil, and a person who is good, genuinely good, it's our moral religious obligation that we think, we believe, and we declare that person as really good, because we have to speak the truth. We cannot compromise on truth, and if it's a truth that a person is good, then he or she has to be declared as good.
Sorry, I was on mute. I apologize. So there's a question here that I'll read it out. Is the sole purpose of life is to test us for the next life? So our life here, is it just a test? That's all it is?
Uh, you see, this is the purpose of life that the message of God informs us about. But the message of God has a certain role to play in our lives, which is to clarify what the overall purpose of life is. That doesn't really mean that each one of us doesn't have other goals in life. Uh, you know, we all have been blessed with abilities that if we identify them and put them to use properly, we will be able to use our respective goals in life. I mean, there's so much of, you know, challenge in life. There's so many things to be done. This life is beautiful. There are uh, there are many things that we can achieve through the abilities that have been given to us. So we adopt our respective professions. Uh, we go for certain goals in life. They are all important to be achieved, provided they are not evil, they are not morally unacceptable. Those smaller purposes are not negated, they're not condemned, but they're not discussed in details in detail in religion because they're already given. Don't forget that the purpose of religious message is to give to you uh, enlightenment, guidance in areas where humans are lacking, where they need guidance from the heavens, from the Almighty. When it comes to the question of my immediate goals in life, the temporary, short-lived uh, goals, well, I already know. If I don't know, there are others who know. I will interact with others, learn from others, and be able to find out what exactly am I supposed to be doing in this life. Should I become a scientist or a philosopher or a poet or a teacher, whatever? So these goals are there. They are not being negated. But what is the ultimate goal? I mean, after all, after having become a scientist or a philosopher or a poet or a sportsman, etc., all these goals, after we achieve them, it's all going to be over. But is that what life is all about? That we come to this world and achieve our goals in life, respective goals of doing a few things, and then we go off. God's message tells us that not at all. This life may have started at a certain point in time, but it's eternal. All humans have come to live forever. And this is because, quite apart from doing what we are doing in this life, there's one thing in common to all of us, and that is we are all going through a journey where we are facing the moral and the spiritual challenge. It's that particular challenge which God's message has come to guide us in. The silence is deafening.
I apologize again. Sorry, I was on mute. So there's another question here, and it's related. And what they're asking is that shouldn't the purpose of life be more individual? Why should everyone have the same purpose in life?
Uh, what I said earlier is what is exactly the question is talking about. All of us have different goals, the short term goals of this life. That's why there's so much of diversity. That's why people have been endowed with different abilities. So, in that sense, our goals are different. But then there is the ultimate goal wherein we all humans have been given the same set of teachings, of appreciation, which is the moral domain and the spiritual domain. Even in the moral and spiritual domain, when I say spiritual domain, I mean our contact with God, our Creator. Even here, we are different in our abilities, in the manner we can achieve these goals. But I hope the questioner would appreciate that it has to be a good combination of both. It should be a balance between individual goals, which should be different, unique, and the other goals, which are common to all. Because we all are humans. So we all are similar in some ways, and we are different in other ways. So our immediate goals of this life are different, and in each of those goals too, what we are going through, by the way, is the same trial. You see, whether you've chosen to be a teacher or a doctor or an engineer or whatever, the profession that you go through, the learning process that you go through, throws across to you every day moral challenges. Each day you are in a state of challenge as to how much can you be in contact with your God. So both go hand in hand, individual goals and the goals that again are individual, but they're common to all of us. Some of them, I mean, obviously, I'm not an IT man. I am a complete illiterate, so I would not know how to operate a computer, etc. So I'm different from many of you in that sense, because you are much better and experts in a certain field of about which I know very little. So here we are different because our backgrounds are different, our abilities are different, our interests, our aptitude are different. But even in this domain, when you are in the business of information technology, in the profession of it, uh, you go through a number of situations where you're called upon to take decisions which have uh, a moral, significance. That's what is common to all humans. But then, obviously, there is diversity as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Zaheer. Uzma Barki, you want to unmute your mic and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Zaheer. It's Usman.
Walaikum.
Dr. Saab, my question is unrelated to your lecture right now, but I'm very curious to find out if the works by of um, just one second, forgetting the name, Farahuddin Sahab and has been translated or not. I mean, I'm trying to get hold of his research on Islam, but it's all in Urdu. I'm wondering if any of his works been translated into English.
Hamiduddin Farahi, yes, his
Hamiduddin
work,
Farahid.
yeah, his work. Our friend colleague Dr. Shahzad Salim is very keen on doing translations, and I'll get in touch with him and I'll let you know. I'm sure you're in touch with him as well.
Yes, I am.
Uh,
Okay.
let's find out.
Okay.
You see, what has happened is that because most of the work done by Maulana Hamiduddin Farahi was further explained in detail and clarified by Maulana Amin Hassan Islai, and still further by Javed Ahmad Ghamidi Sahab.
Right.
So the works of the latter two were translated in English as well, but I'm sure that in some of the stuff done by Maulana Farahi is also in English, but let me check it for you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else has a question that they want to unmute their microphone and ask, please go ahead. All right. So there's another question here that I'll read it out to you. Why Allah asks us to pray? If I can achieve purification without praying 5 times a day, what role Salat uh, prays in purification? So what they're really asking is that why should, what does Salat has to do with purification?
You see, the formal prayer, Salat, is a part of Al-Kitab, the law. The law or Al-Kitab is needed in areas where we humans, if it was left to us, we would have disagreed. Like this friend of ours whose question you've put across has has a tendency to disagree that this formal prayer shouldn't be there. Well, let me say that the Almighty disagrees. He has actually given a law in only those areas where, if it was left to us, we would have gone wrong. So the Almighty is telling us that, look here, when it comes to remembering God, if it was to be left to your discretion, then you would not have been able to do it properly. So God is telling us that because of his knowledge and the understanding that he has, obviously it's perfect, of our nature, we need to be bound to pray to him formally 5 times a day for us to be able to do justice with it. It's a very small expectation, 5 minutes each. But that's what he has informed us about, that if it is not done that way, then the purpose of prayer, the purpose of remembering God is very likely to be lost by most people. So that's what I said, that the law, the Sharia, Al-Kitab is needed in the areas where if humans were left on their own discretion, they were very likely to go wrong.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute your microphone and ask, or you can write it down and I'll read it out to Dr. Zaheer. No? Okay. So there's another question here. There are people who do good and don't believe in afterlife, going against the argument that people do good because there's an afterlife and judgment waiting for us. What can be said about these people and how they compare to people who do good in part because they believe in afterlife and death? So what they're really asking is, there are people who obviously do not believe in afterlife, but they still do good deeds. And then there are people who believe in afterlife and they might not do very well. So how do we compare these two groups of people?
You see, on the judgment day, the Almighty is going to decide on the basis of two factors. How well did a person respond to the possibility of information and knowledge that was available to him? How did he react to the truth that was made available to him? A. And how much did he try to conform to the truth, to the understanding of what is right from what is wrong that was available to him? One has to do with understanding, and the other has to do with practice. Now, a person does not acknowledge a life hereafter, and we understand that the life hereafter is a reality. This person is going to be questioned by the Almighty as to why he or she didn't believe in a life hereafter. As I said yesterday, his her circumstances are going to be taken into consideration. It will it would be investigated as to what actually happened. Why did this good person, apparently good person, not acknowledge a reality that was quite obvious and which was presented by the messengers of God very clearly and effectively? There could be one of the two possibilities. One possibility would be that the reality of the life hereafter was presented to him properly, but he was rigid, inflexible, arrogant, and didn't bother to take it seriously. Well, in that case, obviously, he'll be found guilty and whatever be the punishment, will be inflicted upon him. The other possibility is that the person, the Almighty, the best judge, the all knowledgeable, wise God, would come to the conclusion that this person is not guilty because there was no reason he could actually have found out, given the performance of the religious people around him, that the life hereafter was a reality. So the ultimate judgment is going to be done by the Almighty. So we will call the understanding of this individual as incorrect, but we will not blame him for not believing. All that we could do and we must do is, if possible, to help him, her understand that what you are not believing in is actually true.
Thank you, everybody. I think we are 5 minutes over. Dr. Khalid, Zaheer have other engagements too. So thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you.
Inshallah, we'll have the next class.